What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a brand new video. Now today you join me inside my very own Suzuki Swift and we're going to be going for a quick POV drive, and this to be doing a bit of a update video about the experience with this car so far, but there is a full proper review that I'll be doing at the end of this month, which is the end of July, where I'll be updating you guys on my 1 year ownership experience, because funny enough in July this car turns a year. So I'll be doing a full breakdown on my experience so far, its first service, what it's been like to live with on a daily basis, to drive around, all those things. But I'll also be tapping into a bit of those things in this video, but I'll be focusing on what it's like to drive, some of its features and so on. I really do hope you guys enjoy this POV, and let's jump straight into it. So this is the 2022 Suzuki Swift GLX. So it is a 1.2 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder motor pushing about 61 kilowatts, which is around 80-ish horsepower and 113 newton meters of torque. Now, this being the GLX, it has the keyless entry and the keyless start feature. So you have the start button right here on the right hand side, and when you apply the clutch and you go to push on it, the car will fire up, and it fires up so quickly that starter motor is really quick. So let's go for a drive and chat a bit about this car. So to begin with, I think I'll start with the ergonomics about this car, and the first thing I'll touch on is the thing that you interact with mostly when driving the car, which is the steering wheel. I just love the size of it. I love how it's very minimalistic, and it sits really well in your hands. The steering wheel is flat bottom, by the way, as you guys can see, so that adds a bit of a sporty edge to it, which, yeah, it's quite cool. One thing I would say, it doesn't bother me, it's not a big deal, but I take note of it somewhat about the steering wheel, is that it isn't quite symmetrical in the kind of buttons they've given you. Now, I know that with cars higher up the range of the Suzuki fleet, you can get cruise control, which on this car you can't get. When you have cruise control, the controls for that, or the buttons for that, are actually on the right hand side right here. But on cars where you can't have cruise control, well, it's just blank right there, which looks, yeah, a bit strange, because you have all these controls on the left hand side for the media system, like skipping through tracks, music, and the control function. Another thing I like about the steering wheel is the phone control buttons. So you have the answering button at the very top. In the middle you have the hang up button, and you have a voice control button. So if you have your phone connected via Apple CarPlay or via Bluetooth, you can use the voice control button to wake up Siri if you're using an iPhone, for example. And I think that's really cool. Another thing I'll touch upon is actually diving into the driving experience, and I'll start with the suspension. Now, the suspension on this car feels very, very nice. It's very supple and it rides over bumps really well. But one thing I noted about the suspension is that the travel distance isn't very long. Like, the geometry of the suspension itself isn't very long. So if you hit a very hard bump, it actually bottoms out. But otherwise, on normal driving, if you're just driving on relatively normal bumps, like right now currently, it feels very nice, it feels very smooth. Although you can tell it's not really sophisticated suspension, like when you're in, say, a Mercedes or a VW, those cars, you can tell that the suspension is a bit sophisticated. But for everyday driving, for normal driving, in terms of how it feels, it does certainly feel like comfortable, even more comfortable than some very expensive cars, for sure. So another thing I'll dive into is, oh, by the way, my car is optioned with the 5-speed manual. You can get an auto. Now, for driving, the manual lever itself feels really nice. It's very smooth, it's very easy to engage, and yeah, the throw on the gear lever is quite short, which is quite satisfying. I mean, this is not a performance car in any way, but I do enjoy how this car shifts. You know, it feels really nice, decently nice. Another thing that I'll touch upon is the driving position. The driving position on this car is really, really nice. I feel like the nose on the car sort of dives down and it disappears out of sight, so you have all this view in front of you. You can't see like the bonnet or the arches, but you still have a great idea of where all these things are positioned, like all the corners of the car are positioned when driving, so it's easy to maneuver it. It's easy to judge like spaces when you go to park the car and so forth. So yeah, it's really nice. But one thing I noted is that the blind spots on the car can be quite horrendous. On the A pillar and also right there on the C pillar, especially the one on the C pillar, that one is just really nasty. I've had several situations where I was about to pull into a junction and at first glance I missed a car coming because of the blind spot. When I go to look again, there's literally a car passing in front of me, and I just think to myself, what would have happened if I actually pulled into the road? So in those situations, you just have to thank God that you didn't actually drive into the road. So yeah, blind spots can be quite horrific on this vehicle, but the mirrors are quite decently big. You have a great view of everything that's going on behind you. Even on this center rear view mirror, it's quite nice. There's also a reverse camera on the car. Resolution is not the highest in the world, but it works for what this car is. So yeah, I can take what that is. Another thing that I really like about driving this car is the seats. The seats feel very, very comfortable. Like they're so well cushioned, and you can just drive for miles and miles on end in this car and you'll never get tired. Like your back doesn't ache, it always feels comfortable. And I do quite like how the seats themselves look. Quite tricky for me to show you guys the seats while I'm driving because I have to look at the road ahead, but this is the seat in the GLX. Very comfortable, very nice. So fuel consumption, with my kind of driving, I usually average around 5 liters per 100 kilometers. Now Suzuki claims this car can do 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers, of which I do believe, because 5 liters per 100 kilometers is pretty much, you know, there's no difference to 4.9. So I believe that this car can do that. Now the car has a 37 liter tank, and to fill up it costs me about 630 to 650 rands. So yeah, not too much, but I don't know, should I say the tank itself, it's not a big tank, but because the engine is also not like too big, it doesn't, well, the car doesn't consume too much fuel, so it feels like the tank itself is adequate for this car. So normally I get a range of about 630 kilometers on a full tank. So I don't know, is that good? Is that bad? Suzuki claims you can drive for about 730 kilometers on a full tank in this car. I've never seen 700. Like I said, when I fill up the car, I usually see about 630 kilometers, which is relatively close to what they claim, I guess. So yeah, can it do 700? I don't know, maybe it's possible, but yeah, that's normally what I get in terms of fuel consumption and how much I spend to fill up the car. Okay, performance. I know it's not a performance car, but hey, I guess we also have to touch on what the experience is like when you get to exploit the power. Now, like I said, 61 kilowatts, which is around 80 horsepower, 113 newton meters of torque. Now, where the car is lacking is when it comes to torque. I mean, 113 Newton meters isn't a lot, and also the car is naturally aspirated, so it's not forced induction. So the advantage of turbo motors is that they do come with a decent amount of torque. So when pulling away at low speeds, or when trying to get up to speed, that's where this car struggles. But when you're already going at speed, it actually does pull. It starts pulling anywhere just over 2000 RPM. That's when you get the full torque, which is relatively okay. Maybe not the full torque. That's when most of the torque on this car comes in, just above 2000 RPM. But when you're revving around 3000 RPM, that's when it really pulls. I mean, if I'm doing about 100 kilometers an hour and I'm in the highest gear, which is 5th gear, the car still pulls. Like, I kid you not, if I go on the throttle, it does pull. So you do have to downshift when you want to overtake because of the low torque, but once it's revving, it really does get going, which is, yeah, pretty nice. It's quite quick because it's a very light car. It weighs about 830 kilograms. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. I think, yeah, it weighs around 830 kilograms, somewhere there, not 700. So yeah, that's still very light. I mean, under 1 ton is, yeah, it's a very light car if you ask me. So I think that's where you get the benefit of the quite decent or quite low fuel consumption, that low weight, and being able to, you know, drive it fairly quickly, or being able to get up to speed because of the lightweight. Where you really do feel the benefit of the low weight is in the corners. This thing is so easy to chuck into curves and into bends. I mean, it's actually quite hilarious. I mean, because it's not a performance car, so it doesn't have the kind of suspension setup required for a car to go quickly around corners and stuff. You can't really push it too much, but when you're going around curves, I mean, you can really throw it, and yeah, it doesn't understeer. It does cope well with the curves, again, because of its lightweight. So it's quite hilarious and quite fun when I get to do that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. So yeah, in terms of dynamics, it can be quite fun. Now, this being the GLX, it has wider tires than on the GA and GL. Those cars come with 165 millimeter tires. This comes with 185, so slightly wider, which is really appreciated. You do feel the difference. It feels more balanced on the road, and yeah, that's the benefit of having wider tires. But overall, in terms of living with it, I mean, no issues. It has a naturally aspirated motor. It also has a manual gearbox. These things hardly go wrong. Like, you can literally drive it forever. You just need to take it to service when it's time to service it. So no issues whatsoever. So infotainment screen, I mean, I don't know what brand this is, but I've heard it's some kind of collaboration between Suzuki and some brand. It's quite laggy when using it in its normal state, but I always have my phone connected using Apple CarPlay, and when you're using Apple CarPlay, it's very responsive. It's very quick. You just forget about the normal infotainment system itself. So it's a great thing that it comes as standard. Well, on the GLX, it comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which are a big thumbs up from me. Now, another thing which I like about this car is that the sound system is very, very decent. Like, for what this car is, I tell you guys, the sound system is really satisfyingly good. Now, don't jump into the car expecting it to sound like Harman Kardon or Bang & Olufsen, but for what this car is, okay, I'm being given the go through. For what this car is, the sound system is really, really good. And I'll say something which is quite unbelievable, frankly, is that the sound system in this car sounds much better than the standard sound system that you get in all these new Mercedes-Benz cars, like the new C-Class, the new GLC, the new GLA and so forth. The standard sound system in those cars, guys, I'm telling you, it's really horrible. No volume, no bass. Like, okay, it sounds clear, but it just sounds flat because you have no bass, you have no volume, so it's really not satisfying. It's really horrible. And in this car, sound system is really good. I guess those guys are just pushing you to like order their higher up sound system, which is Burmeister. I mean, as a business move, it makes sense. Make your customers pay more for, you know, more features from the cars. So I guess, yeah, it makes sense in that way. But yeah, that's what I have to say about the sound system on this car. So I think next I just want to find somewhere to park and I'll get to show you guys around the car. I mean, I've already done a review on it, so I'll leave the link to that review down in the description below so you can check it out. But I just want to show you guys a few of the features. Oh, another thing to note, I have a windscreen crack right there. So this car has received multiple or countless stone chips or stone hits, and yeah, some of them have been really horrendous, and unfortunately one of them has resulted in a windscreen crack. I also have like a dent on the, let me see if I can pull in here and find somewhere to park and show you guys around the car. So there are a few dents coming from stone chips, and yeah, I mean, such as life, you can't control such things, so it happens, it's normal. I do quite like driving this thing. It's very relaxing, it's really nice, it's really easy to drive also, and I do quite enjoy it. I mean, I just find myself sometimes pushing it like this. On camera it won't come across, I mean, I'm not really going quickly, but I'm going at a decent pace. On camera it won't show, but it's quite easy to, you know, to push it when you need to. It revs nice, being naturally aspirated. And I just find myself jumping over some bumps like this one. So I just jump over it because it's smooth. So yeah, quite cool, quite nice. Oh, another thing to note is on very bright days, if I'm driving directly facing the sun, the top of the dashboard is very reflective, so it'll reflect onto the windscreen. It's not really distracting, but yeah, it's almost distracting. So yeah, that's another thing to note. I mean, the dashboard, the entire dashboard is made out of I won't say rough plastic, but it's kind of shiny plastic, so that's why it does kind of reflect when you're driving towards the sun. So that's something to note. But yeah, interior quality, I mean, the whole interior is made out of plastic pretty much. I think I should park facing the other way because the sun is just... Okay, let me see how I can park. Okay, interior quality, most of the interior is pretty much made out of plastic. So yeah, if you have stuff like keys or whatever or bottles in the door pockets, they do rattle when you're driving or when you're listening to music, because the bass on this car does kick, hey? So if you have stuff in the door pockets, they'll rattle while your bass is going away. So yeah, there are some nice padding like cloth material here and there, but you don't get into this car expecting leather and whatever. So there's like this cloth here, there's also one on the armrest where you can just have your arm to relax while driving. There's no central armrest or cubby, so it's a bit awkward on this side, but I never really found it awkward because I always rest my arm on this bolster, which is, yeah, quite protruding, and I do get comfortable when driving. So yeah, it's a very relaxing car to drive. So I think right now we're just gonna quickly jump outside and I'll show you guys a bit of the GLX goodness. So I think I'm gonna take my phone because yeah, I have my camera connected to see what the car is showing me. So as you guys can see, the lucent orange metallic is just glistening away in the sun, and it does look quite nice. I do quite like this paint color because yeah, it's very bright, it's very beautiful also. But yeah, GLX, another thing I wish they did is, I wish, this being the GLX, I wish they took the LED lights from the Swift Sport and put them on here. I mean, that would have completed the look on the GLX at least. So GLX rims, which are, you know, two-tone with the silver and gloss black, 15 inches, they do look quite nice. And yeah, that's pretty much the car. Coming around to the rear, on the rear it actually does have LED tail lights, and they look really nice at night, lit up in like a form of C shape. So yeah, that is pretty much it with this POV video, guys. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it, and do stay tuned for the update video on what it's been like to own this car for a year. But yeah, that's pretty much everything from me, and yeah, cheers guys.